Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the son of the forger and got harem? Part 3. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. Dragon smiled as everyone gaped. Well, that was interesting. Who's reading next? He asked. I will, Athena said. Hephaestus nodded and the book suddenly appeared in Athena's lap. She picked it up and started to turn to the right page. Just to let you guys know, Dragon said as Athena was finding the next chapter, we'll take a break after the next chapter. That way, Apollo and/or Artemis can pay up on their parts of their bet. They all nodded as Apollo and Artemis geared themselves up for their win or loss, but they didn't want to think of that. Athena found her page and started reading then before anyone could say anything else. Chapter 7. Up, middle, down, she read. The demigods and Naruto were confused at the title, but shrugged it off, believing that the title would be explained during the story. For 15 minutes, the counselors were listening in Naruto's plan, adding a few things so won't be a gape in the plan. Even Percy added some things in the plan. After the last detail been put in, they all went to the cabin to explain to their siblings what the plan is and to prepare. Pretty soon, Capture the Flag had started. This got every one of the demigods and goddesses blood pumping. Capture the Flag was their favorite game after all. Naruto was also interested, wondering just what his other had in store. All of the campers, except for the children, were there stretching or testing their weapons. Naruto was twirling his spear around with his shirt off, leaning on the tree. The Aphrodite girls drooled at the sight, while many of the other girls blushed, mainly Thalia, Annabeth, Selena, and Clarice. Even the hunters got a mild blush on their faces, mainly because they actually liked the blonde out of all of the males in the world, as a friend of course. Sibling feelings for the one he rescued, like Lily and Rose. Zoe was blushing the most out of all the hunters. Artemis looked put off that her hunters were blushing, but quickly shook herself of it, silently willing the book to hurry up and show her hunters winning. Katie saw the looks and shook her head. Selena, Clarice, Annabeth and Thalia told her their feelings for them, individually of course. There was no telling what would happen if the four figure out that they all had feelings for the same blonde. For her, she just saw Naruto as her brother. He always treated her like an older brother would and she quickly had some sibling love for him. She saw most of the guys green with envy, especially the Apollo children, and she also saw Percy clench his white fist, making her giggle. Percy had a crush on Annabeth so bad. The girls mentioned to have a crush on Naruto blushed brightly, while Naruto blushed in embarrassment. Heck, the Olympian goddesses blushed. This did however make some of the Olympian gods grit their teeth in anger. Percy gritted his teeth and blushed as well. Annabeth noticed and quickly grabbed his hand again and squeezed. He looked to her and she smiled at him. He gave her a quick kiss on her cheek. Thanks again, wise girl, he muttered. Someone's got to keep you in check, seaweed brain, she muttered back. Meanwhile, Demeter was smiling at how her daughter had a brother figure to look up to. Apollo tried not to pay attention to his kid's envy as he silently hoped he won this bet, otherwise his plan would be thrown into disarray. Heroes. Chiron called, getting everyone's attention. You know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. Red team Camp Half-Blood shall take the west woods. Blue team Hunters of Artemis shall take the east woods. I will serve as referee and medic. No maiming, please. All magic items are allowed. To your positions. The campers started jumping tree through tree, even ones who just started learning it, while the Artemis's hunters ran in the woods. All of the campers made it to their positions to see a giant hole at the bottom. Naruto grinned. My plan is starting out well. He said. His plan was simple. Apollo and Hermes' cabin, led by Percy, were going to jump across the trees, while Demeter and Dionysus' cabin, led by Thalia, were going in that hole which made like a tunnel. Dionysus' cabin consisted of 10 of his kids, thanks to Naruto, who rescued them from abuser monsters. Dionysus was very happy those years. Dionysus looked up at that in shock. He looked to the blonde shinobi in bewilderment, as if seeing the blonde for the first time. He saved more than half of my children in another timeline. He thought, unbelieving of the fact. Not to mention, this made him very nervous about the bet he made with Dragon. Naruto would take a small team made of Charles, Katie, Selena, Bianca and Metellus with Ares and Aphrodite cabin, led by Clarice. The love kids want a piece at those hunters for mocking love. Aphrodite looked positively gleeful at her children's determination, and Athena and Hephaestus' cabin will guard the flag, since they were the most effective in guarding. Everyone would be in radio contact to inform the others of their status. Artemis still wasn't scared. After all, even if he was better than most men she met, just how skilled could this child be to her hunters, who she trained for many years? Naruto, are you sure this is going to work? Annabeth asked a little doubt in her voice. The hunters won 50 times in a row, and they were never close in beating them. Plus, Naruto's company helped tone down her hubris since it was a dangerous flaw for her. Well, that's good to know, Percy said smiling at Annabeth. She flushed. Shutted seaweed brain, she mumbled. Beg me, Thalia coughed. Naruto smiled confidently at her, making her blush heavily and her heart fluttering. His smile could warm the hearts of even the coldest of people. Naruto put a hand on her shoulder and stared at her straight in the eyes, making her blush even more when she saw those usually colorful eyes that are now light blue that is full of warmth and kindness. Only Naruto can make her feel like this. Don't worry, Annabeth. We can win this one. We got the most excellent plan and the best leaders, Naruto said, remember what I said years ago. As long as you have confidence, nothing can stop you. Annabeth smiled and hugged him greatly. Naruto knew when to say the best things when it was needed. He's right. They can win this. Unnoticed by her, Percy frowned and looked away from what he had seen, putting his armor on. Why couldn't he make her feel like that? He thought with jealousy. Naruto winced. Hey, sorry man, I don't think my other's trying to piss you off or anything but. Percy waved it off. Don't worry about it, he sighed. That's the old me. I like to think I'm better now. You are, Percy, Annabeth said as she hugged him close. But she did punch him in the shoulder and said, but you're still a jealous jerk. I know, he said with an eye roll. Percy forgot about his jealousy when they set position. Percy's group ready to climb, Thalia's group ready to jump in the tunnel, Clarissa's group and Naruto's small team ready to run, and Annabeth's group on guard. Every leader smiled at one another before they heard the horn. Begin. Let the bets be placed now. Hermes called out loudly. Dragon snapped his fingers, and a large bag appeared before him. I've got $1,000 worth of drachma on Apollo winning his bet. I'll take that, Zeus said with confidence in his daughter's skills, and match it for another 1,000 on Artemis. I've only got 25 drachma, Thalia said. But I'm placing them all on the hunters winning. I'm going with Camp Half-Blood winning, Percy said. Just because I'd like to see them win for a change. 25 on Camp Half-Blood. Percy? No betting. Annabeth shouted, slapping her boyfriend on the shoulder. 10 on Half-Blood. Gotta support my bro, you know, Leo shouted with a wide grin. Cool. I always wanted a brother. Naruto shouted with a wide grin. 14 on Half-Blood, Naiko said, not surprising anyone who knew of his dislike of the hunters. Mary's went into the thinking man's pose as he contemplated his bet. You know. I think I'll abstain at the moment. The strategies of the hunters are good, but this punk's does have merit. I'll just wait and see how it goes. Just know that I'm routing for Half-Blood. 200 on Camp Half-Blood, Poseidon said with a smile. And with that, the bets were collected, with the largest amount of bets against the hunters. Artemis looked a little miffed, but couldn't really hold it against them. Her hunters were good after all. Mount Olympus. Unknown to the campers and hunters, the gods and goddesses, minus Artemis, were watching the battle on the mist. Almost every minor god was watching this battle of the campers and the hunters. Usually, only few of them would be interested in it, since Artemis won every time. But Naruto was on the scene, and they all heard legends of the blonde. So now, everyone was watching with the Olympians at their thrones in the meeting room. It was a testament to how much faith she had in her hunters, as Artemis didn't even blink at the extremely odd occurrence of every god and goddess on Olympus watching the latest capture the flag game. The other Olympians were shocked, however. They stared awestruck at the screen as minor gods and goddesses raced to find a seat. Damn, Hermes said grinning. Naruto's got him wanting more. Ooh. I'm definitely liking where this going. Ares cackled. He'd been doing that a lot lately. Naruto was shocked himself. Is my other really that good? I guess we're about to find out, my son, Hephaestus said, quickly switching into his Minato form. Man, I can't wait for this fight. This will be awesome. Hermes exclaimed, holding a bag of popcorn. He met Naruto when was with Annabeth, Luke, and Thalia. It was only a brief meeting, but Hermes already liked the kid. Even more so when he rescued Travis and Connor from a bunch of Laestygonians and saved Luke at the Hercules quest. Hermes perked up at the mention that he saved Connor and Travis as well as Luke during his quest. His smile became extremely wide in obvious contentment as he conjured himself a bag of popcorn as well. Now I'm even more interested. He said as he ate a handful of popcorn. He held the bag out to Apollo and asked, popcorn? Apollo looked at it. He smiled. Popcorn, he said and took a handful. Poseidon nodded in agreement. I usually don't watch these fights since the hunters always win, but this should be good. I heard how Naruto fights and I'm interested in his skills. Then he sighed in disappointment. If only he wasn't a champion of the Owlhead. The Owlhead glared at him when she heard that. The Owlhead glared at this Poseidon as well. Sorry to burst your bubble, Poseidon, but he's my champion, Athena said. Poseidon rolled his eyes. Only because you hoodwinked Hephaestus into allowing him to be, he said. I did no such thing. Is that normal? Naruto asked Percy and Annabeth as Poseidon and Athena began arguing. I mean, you seem pretty cool with each other, but your parents look like they want to pull each other's eyes out. The couple sighed tiredly. Unfortunately, Annabeth said. My mom and Percy's dad are known for their disagreements. Me and Annabeth are just the best representation of how great they can be when they are cooperating, Percy said, throwing his arm around his girlfriend. Annabeth and I see weak brain, Annabeth said with an eye roll. Percy rolled his as well and smiled crookedly at her, making her blush again. Athena and Poseidon finally stopped arguing, and Athena quickly found her place again and started reading. Sorry to burst bubble Poseidon, but I like my champion. Athena said, he's got intelligence, cunning, and skills, something I like in my champions, so your wish won't be granted soon. He's even better than Odysseus. Poseidon rolled his eyes at that. Ares rolled his eyes as well. The owl heads are really alike. Sounds like you have a crush on him, Owlhead, Poseidon said in a sarcastic voice. Athena blushed a little, making Poseidon's eyes widen, then he grinned. You do have a crush on him, don't you? This is like the Theseus thing, is it? Athena blushed even more and started denying it, while Poseidon teased her even more. Naruto's blush returned full force at that, while Athena began to blush as well. Annabeth, however, began spluttering at how her mother had a crush on Naruto. She was a virgin goddess. She wasn't supposed to have a crush on a guy. Meanwhile, the males of Nico, Jason, Leo, Dragon, Ares, Apollo, and Hermes began to laugh uncontrollably. And ha 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 not, ha 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 again. Ares laughed hard. Blackmail material. Apollo and Hermes shouted at the same time. Athena looked at them in shock, then anger as she tried to say something, but she couldn't say anything. Oh, I'm so going to enjoy the next couple of books after this one. Dragon cackled evilly, thinking of how Naruto's little harem would be coming together and the hilarity that would ensue. Oh, shut it, you two. You both sound like children, Hades said in annoyance, causing Poseidon to pout and Athena to blush at her childish action. I want to see what my daughter can do. Hades heard the Hephaestus son, Naruto, was training her to defend herself. He was grateful for that since Bianca could now defend herself and he might train Nico as well. Now, he wanted to see what she could do. Hades and Nico sat up a bit straighter, also interested in seeing Bianca's new skills. The Olympians soon saw Naruto getting to the massive campers shirtless. Like the girls in Camp Half-Blood, the Olympian women had major blushes on their face, seeing the bare chest on the blonde. For Aphrodite, she was ogling the blonde, he looked even better than the gods. Even Hera had a light blush on her face. The gods saw this and glared at the blonde, except for Hephaestus. The man just sighed and shook his head. His son attracted many women, mortal girls, demigoddesses, and goddesses alike. I mean, Kian was stalking the blonde for 5 years, much to his exasperation. That woman just didn't give up. He's hounded by Snow bitch? Aphrodite asked. Damn. That poor bastard. The other Olympians agreed, as did Jason, Piper, Leo, and Thalia. Naruto shivered, not really knowing why, but understanding that his other was in deep trouble. Oh my, such a good-looking man, Aphrodite said with a giggle, I may have to visit him one day. When Hephaestus heard that, he growled in anger, for 2 reasons. 1, she was planning to bed his son. And second, she was going to cheat on him again. There was only so much a person could take when their wife-husband cheats on them with more than one person. Especially for a god or goddess. Look at his mother. The thought of his mother made him even angrier, when eventually he snapped. The cheating thing is hypocritical coming from you, Hephaestus, Dragon deadpanned. You cheat on her as well. Maybe not as much, but cheating is still cheating. The Forge god sighed. I know, he said. But I believe my other is enraged at how my wife is looking to bed one of my sons. Well, he is a hunk. Aphrodite said lightly. Hephaestus turned and glared witheringly at her, making her flinch away and frown. I tolerate your cheating, my dead wife, he hissed darkly, making everyone but Dragon stiffen at the tone. Because like Dragon said, it would be hypocritical of me to say otherwise. But make no mistake, attempt to bed one of my children, you'll wish Ares was the one you pissed off. The others were shocked. Hephaestus never threatened Aphrodite. Never. Aphrodite was so shocked that she couldn't even form a response. It hurt that he threatened her like that. He never threatened her. Ares growled at his brother, but one look from Dragon made him rethink attacking him. Aphrodite, if you dare touch my son, I will burn you till you won't look attractive to any man for a century. Hephaestus shouted in pure rage. Everyone was shocked that Hephaestus yelled, since the man was the calmest out of all the gods, even Hades. He never yelled at anyone, not even at his wife or mother. Aphrodite was shocked the most. Ares was going to cut Hephaestus down with a sword, but he stopped when saw his mom's glare. Ares, sit back down on your butt, now. Hera growled. Ares paled and sat down. Out of all the Olympians, Hera scared him the most. His mother was more powerful than him, so she could lock him up with a room full of flowers and fluffy animals, his powers taken away. It actually happened once, much to his horror. He wasn't the same for 50 years. So he listened to his mother out of fear, not that he would admit it. While everyone was still shocked at Hephaestus yelling, the last paragraph had everyone laughing at Ares, who blushed and glared at everyone. "It's not funny," he shouted, though it sounded more like whining. "I think so Percy wheezed, barely able to get oxygen to his lungs. "Shut it, punk." Athena chuckled. It was nice to see Ares brought down a peg or two. Hera sent a smile at her favorite son, but her son turned away from her. She sighed, feeling sadness once again. Why doesn't he love her? Why doesn't he act as son would to their mother? She didn't understand. Hera looked sad as well, wondering the same thing. Hephaestus scoffed. "I think you know, mother," he said sarcastically. Hera winced slightly. Naruto frowned at the two. What's going on? The Greek myths being twisted worse than the Joker's psyche, Dragon groaned. Many Olympians looked offended at the comment, but few had to think on it and conceded Dragon had a point. When he was born, Hephaestus wasn't the most beautiful child to be born. Myth state Zeus threw him off Olympus, but in reality it was Hera. She didn't want her perfect family image ruined. Naruto scowled at the woman, who flinched even more under the gaze. "What possessed you to do that?" he shouted. "To your own son." Hera felt her indignation rise at being yelled at by a demigod of all things, so her immediate response was, "Who are you to demand answers of me? I'm the guy who will kick your ass all the way back to Konoha if I need to." Naruto snarled. Now, Naruto," Jason said, trying to play mediator. "There's no reason to go that far yet." "Yes," Piper said, channeling her charm speak into her voice. "Let's all calm down and get back to reading, please." Aphrodite smiled at Piper. Her charm speak was powerful. Naruto, however, wasn't having it. "I won't stand here and let this hag get away with hurting my old man," he growled. Bro. I don't think fighting Tia. Stay out of this, Leo Valdez." Hera snapped. "This is why I don't go into politics," Dragon complained in his head, rubbing his eyes with his hand. "Makes me very glad I'm a Christian. Less complicated than this train wreck." He shook his head and said, "Let's continue reading. This argument can last forever, so let's put a hold on it for now." Naruto and Hera looked irritated at being interrupted, but Athena took advantage of the silence and began reading again. Aphrodite stayed quiet and sat down, trying to think on her husband's reaction. He didn't get angry before on all her other affairs, so why now? Was it because it was his favorite son she was thinking of betting? Or was it something else? Aphrodite looked a bit upset. Despite everything she did as an Olympian goddess, she did find, over the years, she had grown to care about Hephaestus's opinion of her. Sure, he certainly made his distaste for her affairs well known, but he never snapped at her like that. It made her feel terrible. After a few minutes of silence, they heard the campers run to their positions, and Zeus coughed a little to break the silence. "So let's watch the fight, shall we?" All the Olympians nodded and sat back and watched. Hestia watched with interest and a smile as she saw the blonde encouraging his close friends. She had been observing him for the past few years when she discovered him. How he treats his friends and family, his kindness towards others, and his courage to help anyone that is in danger. She grew fonder and fonder of him as time passed, and she held a great affection towards the blonde shinobi. Now the Olympians' eyes popped out of their heads, literally for Hermes, Apollo, and Ares. "No," Zeus shouted. "What now?" Dragon growled. "I won't let my sister near that blonde." Naruto jumped up at that. "You can't make decisions for her," he shouted. "I can and I will. She won't go near you and that's final," he shouted back. "I will not allow my eldest sister to be endangered by anyone." Dragon looked at him funny. "You're that protective of Hestia?" he asked. "He's that protective of you?" he asked Hestia, who blushed slightly in embarrassment and nodded. Dragon whistled. "That's gotta suck," he said bluntly. "It truly does suck," Hestia pouted, making Dragon laugh at how cute she looked. "I truly don't regret taking this job," Dragon said, laughing as he kicked back in his recliner. "Thank you, Spirit, for this opportunity. Let's put the debate off for later, I wanna see what Apollo made Artemis bet to." Artemis glared at him, but said nothing. She knew her hunters would not fail, so she let him have his fun. For now. Pretty soon, the campers got ready and went in position while the god stayed silent to enjoy the match. "Amp Half-Blood." Ready, Chiron called out, waving his flag up. All the campers tensed, ready for anything and eager to get started. The hunters are tensed as well. Even though they won for 50 years, doesn't mean they should relax. Always stay alert and vigilant. The younger kids were cheering for their siblings, especially Naiko, who was whooping for both his sister and Naruto. "Begin." Artemis nodded at her hunters' attitudes. "Very good," she praised. They haven't become lax and forgotten their training. Meanwhile, Nico was blushing at how his other was making a fool out of himself. Gods, was I that bad back then? Yes, Percy, Annabeth, and Thalia said in unison. Nico blushed harder, making Hazel giggle. Frank chuckled because really, who couldn't at the other Nico's boisterous attitude? And just like that, everyone began. Thalia's team went through the holes and started running to their locations. Percy's team started climbing up the trees silently and jumped from tree to their position. And Naruto's squad and Clarissa's team started running. Annabeth's team spread out and waited for the hunters, ready to fight. Smart. Attack from all conceivable angles, Ares hummed in approval, nodding his head. That way, sooner or later the enemy slips up. Once the slip occurs, the others can begin to pour on the heat, making more slips occur and allowing the allied forces a chance to go for the crippling blow. But the plan also has the slight chance of spreading your forces too thin, Athena said with a frown. Well, for the larger numbers of Camp Half-Blood, it's not much of a problem. The hunters do, sadly, have more skill and experience per hunter to approximately every 3 campers. Ares nodded in agreement. Though that can be solved by staggering your forces via skill and attributes. Note that the blonde sent Uncle Poseidon's brat along with the Apollo brats and the Hermes brats. Well, I don't see much in the brat. Poseidon's kid's got the air of a leader, making him a good choice for leading that squad. Additionally, Apollo and Hermes have the better relations with each other, so teaming them up makes sense. With the Apollo kids being so skilled in archery, they now have the advantage of being in the canopy of the trees, perfect for sniping. Hermes kids are cunning thieves, so having them up high is a waste of skill. It makes more sense to put them in a place for a well-placed ambush. Athena nodded. And having the Demeter kids and the Dionysus kids make sense, I suppose. They have a better advantage on the ground, being able to manipulate the plant life, and if any of Dionysus's kids were blessed with the ability to control madness, it would make them a very dangerous opponent to fight. It was very rare to have Ares and Athena agree on anything. It was kind of scary. Dragon laughed however. As cool as it is to see you two getting along, I think we should get back to the story now, he said. Athena, who had been in the middle of discussing the pros and cons for having Hephaestus' cabin and her children guard the flag, pouted a little bit but nodded and turned back to the book. Ares sighed in discontent. Naruto and Clarissa's group. Naruto and Clarissa's team continued running with their large stamina. None of them looked even a little fatigued. All of them been running for years because of Naruto's torture training, making them have a lot of stamina, with Naruto having never-ending stamina. Pretty soon, Naruto sensed a few scouts in the area and stopped the group with his hands. There are 3 scouts in the area. All armed with bows and a knife. Naruto said, using his sensing skills. Charles, Medalist, take out the first one at the left. Katie, Selena, take the one at the right. Bianca, with me. The team nodded and separated to eliminate their targets. Won't work. And once it does, Artemis, I'll start blaring bodies by drowning pool, Dragon told her. Selena and Katie went up the trees and saw the 3 hunters there. The hunters looked vigilante, using all their senses to alarm them of anyone over here. Luckily for Katie and Selena, they disguised their scents with wild cherries. The 2 looked at each and grinned in confidence. The 2 grabbed senbon needles that are thin enough to be silent and can stun the target. They waited till they passed them, then threw the senbon at all of them. We've taken care of our targets. The hunters in question felt a prick on their necks. They ignored it, thinking it was a mosquito and kept walking with silent footsteps. After a few minutes, they felt drowsy and tried to shake the feeling, only for it not to work. They felt drowsier and drowsier till they finally fell on their sides, asleep. The 2 girls that did that to them grinned and high-fived each other. Artemis's eye twitched. Lucky shot. Dragon cackled evilly at the words. Oh, the irony. Meanwhile, with Charles and Medalist, they hid under the ground to surprise the hunters. They waited for a few minutes, with great patience, till they felt footsteps on them and sprung their trap. The hunters cried out in surprise when they felt a pull on their ankles. They closed their eyes on instinct and opened them after a few minutes when they saw their body in the ground. They cried out in shock, also trying to call the hunters for help, till they heard a voice. Don't bother, I put up a chakra seal that prevent noises from coming out. The 2 hunters look up to see the 2 children of Hephaestus above them. Charles was smirking while Medalist was grinning. The hunters turned red in rage quickly after realizing what had happened. Release us at once, male, and we won't consider chopping your balls off. One of the hunters exclaimed. Charles only smirked in amusement, enraging them further. I don't think so. This'll make sure you don't report anything you might have found out and keep you from finding out anything. Charles said, still holding that amusing smirk. Then Medalist starts talking, just stay and get comfortable. Someone will get you out after the games. The 2 left, leaving some piss-off hunters in their wake. We got the second team down, Charles reported on the radio. Now, just 1 more to go. Artemis blinked slowly, her smug look falling slightly. She knew those two well. They were her best scouts. Apollo knew this too and couldn't help but smirk slightly. Hey. He might have a chance here. Speaking of one more, Naruto and Bianca were hiding behind the trees to see that the two hunters were Lily and Rose. Naruto pursued his lips. Why did Zo send those two? Even though they were stronger than they looked, because of Artemis's blessing and some training, they were still too young and inexperienced. Any Athena child could defeat those two in a battle. Zo must have thought that they would go straight for the flags and wouldn't sense the trackers. She forgot that there was a ninja with them and with trained demigods at his side. Artemis face palmed. Of course Zo would send the youngest and unexperienced, she moaned. She has far too much faith that being one of my handmaidens makes you invincible. Dragon scrolled through the playlist on his phone, searching for bodies. Naruto pulled out his firewood bow while Bianca pulled out her U-bow, both pulling out sleeping gas arrows. Okay Bianca, on the count of 3, we lay him at their feet. 1 They pull their arrows back, prepared to shoot at a moment notice. 2 The two waited, like an archer waiting for its target. 3. They let go of the bow when the two girls got close enough and it landed between their feet. It immediately let out the gas on the girls. They heard coughing, groaning, and then the two slumped. The gas cleared showing the two girls sleeping peacefully. Let the bodies hit the floor. 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 No. Dragon's phone blared, shocking everyone in the immediate area. Artemis herself jumped out of her seat and glared at Dragon. He merely grinned. Told you I'd play this song when your hunters were taken out, he said cheekily. She glared harder at him. Though, even if she didn't want to admit it, she was starting to feel a slight concern that her hunters were going to have trouble winning. My targets are eliminated, going back to you now, Naruto said, then turned to Bianca and smiled. That was a great shot Bianca. Keep working on it and you can shoot like the hunters. Bianca blushed at the praise and smiled a little. They ran to Clarissa's group so they can keep going. After everyone regrouped, they continued on their track. Hades beamed at his daughter's skills. He was glad that his daughter could defend herself, and he was glad the other version of the blonde son of Hephaestus was helping her. Nico was happy his sister, at least in that universe, she had a better chance to live than his own did. And it begins, Ares said a low, amused tone. Percy's group. Percy's group was halfway to their targeted area. For them, the plan was to wait for the signal from Naruto and attack from above. Hermes' cabin would jump on top of them, while Apollo cabin would shoot arrows among arrows. That was their part. Travis and Connor would be in the front with Percy, since they were the trackers among the group. Smart move and smart strategy, Ares nodded in approval. And Travis and Connor do have a knack for sniffing out their opponents and capture the flag, Piper mused, thinking of her times playing CTF at Camp Half-Blood. And from what I've heard from my siblings, Squidhead is a great leader. Leo laughed. Percy growled. Please don't call me that, he said to the Latino elf, giving him his however bad you think you are, I'm worse stare. Leo paled and wisely shut up. Travis and Connor made a signal motion to stop, so the whole camp did. There are 3 scouts in the area, all in a single knit group. Connor said to the others. So what do we do? Percy asked. The 2 Stoll brothers grinned mischievously, making the ones that weren't Hermes' children shiver in fear. They felt sympathy for those 3 hunters. What all Hermes' children would do, Travis said, and Connor grabbed a few gas bombs. Prank them till they drop both kinds of ways. That's my boys. Hermes cried in happiness. Correction, they really felt sorry for those hunters. Travis and Connor jumped to their locations and saw 3 hunters, one of them that is built like a tank. Connor and Travis grinned at each and threw the gas bombs. The hunters stopped, seeing 2 red balls before it exploded into gas. The gas evaporated after a few minutes to reveal 2 hunters. Artemis relaxed. Ah, Phoebe. She wouldn't fail her. Hey, where'd the other one go? Travis said, and Connor shrugged. They both went down to see where the leader was at, looking around the place. They both stopped when they felt a hand on both their shoulders and stiffened. Looking for me? A girl voice said. The 2 pale and slowly turned to see the big tank-like hunter behind them. They didn't think they could scream so high before or so loud. Hermes winced. Crap. Artemis, however, beamed proudly. Percy stopped whittling his pen when he heard the scream and uncapped his sword. The Stolls sounded like they're in deep trouble, and Percy had to help out. Will, Lee, follow me. The 2 campers nodded and pulled out their bows before following Percy. The 3 campers hopped along the trees, then stopped to see a hunter beating the crap out of the Stolls. Okay, distract her with arrows while I get behind her to knock her out. Percy said and the 2 nodded. Percy jumped behind the hunter silently and waited for arrows to be shot. The 2 delivered on their promises and shot 4's arrows, making the girl stop her beating to dodge the arrows. She didn't notice Percy getting behind before it was too late and got knocked out by the hilt of his sword. Artemis balked. Phoebe was one of her best hunters. right after Zoe. Thalia, however, laughed. Yeah, knew that would happen. Phoebe's spatial awareness isn't that great when she's near a child of Hermes, the daughter of Zeus said in bemusement. Not that it would have done her any good. Percy's a damn monster in a fight. Not to mention he fights dirty. I don't fight dirty. Percy protested. Yes you do. Everyone who knew Percy deadpanned. Percy pouted. Poseidon shook his head in amusement while Naruto grinned. He really needed to get to know this Percy guy a bit better once he got the chance. You two okay? Percy asked, holding out both hands for the two of them. The two of them took the hands gratefully and winced, feeling the pain of that beating. Yeah we're okay, just sore from the beating. Connor said, grumbling a little while he stretched his back. We can still run from here and fight. Travis stretched his back as well, stringing a few curses along the way. Percy nodded and the five went back to the group. When they made it back, Percy picked up the radio. This is Percy speaking, he started out, we got sidetracked from a couple of scouts and the Stoll brothers getting the crap beaten out of them by a large one, said brothers glared at him for telling them that, but Percy ignored it, we're about to go back and move again, so don't worry. Percy waited for a bit before he heard Naruto talking. Must have been my sister Phoebe. She is the largest and toughest out of all my sisters. Something happened with her and a Hermes child years ago in 1920, don't ask. It's her business to tell you. So she sometimes takes it out on the Hermes children unintentionally. Percy nodded in understanding, while the Stolls cursed their brother for making that huntress beat the crap out of them. The team kept moving through the woods, closer to their location. Hermes winced. My heart still goes out to that poor girl, he said mournfully. Naruto and Claris's group. Once the surface team got to their locations, Naruto stopped them. They weren't far from hearing distance and sight distance away from the hunters. They were at the location where they could spring their trap. Naruto took out his radio and said, at my location, waiting. He waited for a few moments before he heard the two of them. I'm at my area, ready to jump at them. I'm under those hunters, eager to surprise them. Naruto grinned and made a few hand signs before saying Earth style. Mud wall. A giant rock wall appeared in front of them, small enough to jump over, but big enough to conceal everyone. Then he did the hidden mist jutsu, which he learned from Zabuza, making a mist all of the forest, now all we need is someone to push it. Naruto smirked. He loved the hidden mist jutsu. Hephaestus leaned forward, eagerly awaiting his son's plan to come to fruition. But we don't have anyone to push it. Claris pointed. She was smarter than most people take credit for, but had to act dumb like her brothers and sisters to cover her mask. Naruto smirked that sent shivers up her spine, both the good and bad kind. Why, oh, why must a blonde make her feel like that? Again, the demigods were shocked in regards to Claris. I'm going to have to ask her if she dumbs herself down to keep her siblings at bay, Percy growled menacingly. I think I'll join you, Annabeth said darkly. I'll take care of her brothers. Thalia agreed evilly. Ares, meanwhile, was scowling. He hated that his daughter apparently had to hide her strategic genius and a little angry, but he was kind of even angrier that she had feelings for the blonde. Well, he guessed this book would tell him if he was worthy of her or not. Naruto, still blushing at how Claris liked him, felt a chill go down his spine, but didn't know why. Who said that we are going to push it? The blonde said. The demigods were confused, but Naruto just bit his thumb and did a few hand signs once before saying. Summoning jutsu. Naruto blinked in shock. I'm going to summon Boss Toad. You signed the Toad contract? Hephaestus asked, shocked. Yeah, Iro-sen let me. Ah. Iro-sensei. Should have known, Hephaestus said. Half of the hunters were guarding the flags, while the rest are either scouting the woods or going to capture the flag with Zoe. The hunters were vigilant but relaxed, since the campers has always lost. But now, since they have yet to hear a report from their scouts, they were getting a little tense. Even more so when they heard the ground rumbling and saw a mist at the field. You two, one of the hunters, that looks to be the leader, said pointing to two hunters, go check what's happening over there. The two chosen hunters hesitated a little, but nodded and went go check what's happening. It was a few minutes when they heard a roar and two terrified screams. They saw the two hunters running, paled and terrified. They stopped, trembling and hyperventilating. Okay, I know he's big and, well, a toad, but I don't think he would cause the hunter to pale and be as terrified as they are right now, Hephaestus noted in some interest and suspicion. Well, Boss Toad is all warty and looks like a Yakuza boss, Naruto said. And he is as tall as the Hokage monument. Still, I'm not all that convinced. Artemis, meanwhile, had the feeling that her hunters were in trouble, but didn't know why. What? What did you saw you two? The hunter demanded. The two girls just stuttered, trying to come up with words, before fainting in exhaustion and fear, and making the readers drop their jaws and Artemis to become a little more concerned. Now, all the hunters were worried and a little scared. They lifted their bows and tightened the strings when they heard rumbling. The rumbling got closer and closer until their fears consumed them and shot arrow after arrow to make the monster go away before eventually running out of arrows. Now they were out of arrows, the rumblings keep continuing, and they are deathly afraid, shaking and white as Hades. The rumbling got closer until they saw a boulder. The hunters were confused about this. How did this boulder terrify the two hunters? Was something behind there, pushing it? The question was answered when the boulder was blasted through. Right in front of them was a giant skeletal, metal-like, T-Rex, in front of them. It roared in front of them and spat out fire, making them scream in fear for the first time. And introducing. Dragon yelled like a wrestling announcer. The mighty leader of the Dinobots themselves, Grimm Luke. Hephaestus's grin became so wide, it began to physically hurt him. Hey, he laughed jovially. Perfect. Perfection. Simply perfection. He wheezed. Transformiers. Hermes and Apollo began singing. More than meets the eye. Transformiers. Robots in disguise. They began laughing loudly, Apollo being the loudest. Why did his other hate this blonde again? This was golden. And he just might win the bet now. Artemis, for the first time since the game began, felt fear. The possibility that she could lose a bet to her brother of all people loomed over her. She shook her head furiously. No. Her hunters must win. They must. The demigods and Naruto were awestruck. My childhood. Percy said with a smile so big he may as well been glowing. I always loved Grimlock. Piper said with a grin, her inner geek that only few have ever seen was beginning to show through. I always wanted him as a pet. Bro. You got the best toys. Leo shouted to Naruto, bowing to him in reverence. You are my god. I am your humble servant. Please teach me the way. Naruto laughed, liking that he had a new disciple to train. Why, most certainly, my apprentice. Come. We must spread chaos to the new world and show them the true way. Artemis began to tremble slightly. This blonde male had just done what no other had ever done. He had demoralized her hunters. Ares and Athena saw this as well. The hunters are toast, Ares cackled. Indeed, Athena smirked. While she respected her sister's hunters, she really wanted her kids to win a CTF game. This would do nicely since her blonde champion, in another reality, had just summoned a freaking transformer into battle. They had never seen this beast before and were terrified so much that they didn't hear a boy yell before it was too late. Now guys. The hunters looked up to see a bunch of demigods jumping off trees and they all grabbed their knives and whatever arrows they had, forgetting about the fearsome beast. The hunters began to fight, but the fear of the dinosaur and the surprise of the trap made them sluggish and a few hunters got knocked out. Under them, the ground erupted around them to form holes and more demigods appeared. It was beginning to be a real fight for the first camper versus hunter game for the first time. Each camper was fighting in groups of 2 or 3 against one hunter, except Thalia and Percy, since they were skilled enough to fight against one of them. Right now Percy was clashing sword and knife with a hunter, while Thalia was overwhelming another hunter. Oh. Fight. 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 Break some legs. Shatter some bones. Win this game. Naturally, Ares was ecstatic that this camper versus hunter game was starting to pan out into a real fight for once. Of course, he wasn't the only one. Go for the gold. Tear those stupid bints into tissue paper. Aphrodite shouted gleefully at her kids. Show them what it means to disrespect love. That's it, boys. Win this game for the might of Camp Half-Blood, my sons. Hermes cheered, holding up a foam finger, saying Hermes kids number 1. On it. Dionysus just smirked, hoping the brats would bring Artemis's brats down a peg. Or 2. Or 3. Dude. We might actually win. Percy said, a grin matching Hephaestus's on his face. Annabeth nodded rapidly. They're getting thrashed out there. She said happily. Camp Half-Blood's going to win. About time. Thalia laughed. Though she was a hunter of Artemis now and knew she might lose her drachma now, she knew what it was like to be on the receiving end of the hunter's attacks during a CTF game. Won't happen like that here though. My smell a bet, Dragon thought, grinning. Zeus was shocked, but fairly impressed. Shocked that his daughter's hunters were losing, but impressed at the careful planning that Naruto used to ensure his win for the camp. Artemis was trembling a little bit more now. It wasn't enough to defeat the hunters, but reinforcements arrived with Naruto's team coming from behind the dinosaur or jumping above the walls. Now, it was 4 to 5 campers versus 1 hunter. Hades and Selena were working together in fighting one, Bikondorf was fighting with his sword against another one, Metellus was using a spear against one of them, and Naruto was running to the flag, knocking a few hunters out. He jumped up to the boulder the flag was at and swung his spear, knocking out a hunter on his left and kicked the feet of another hunter on his right, then knocked her out with the bottom of his spear. Then he grabbed the flag and called out to Thalia. No. Yes. The twin archers shouted in unison as the demigods cheered out loud. Now it's only a jump, skip, and a hop to the boundary line. Percy jumped for joy. Literally with our ninja friend over there. Jason agreed, knowing from his first time playing CTF with the hunters that getting the flag was damn near impossible. Especially now that his sister was a hunter. Naruto was grinning widely. Man, how do I get to this camp? I really want to play this game. I can send you there after this book is done. Hephaestus said smiling. I'm almost tempted to let you, my son, Zu said blankly. That was good planning on the blonde's part and it was nice to see his demigod daughter win her first CTF against the hunters. Artemis was in shock. Never before had anyone grabbed the hunter's flag before. Their skill always made it difficult for the campers to even get in its vicinity. Now they lost it. Quick Zo. She shouted in desperation. Show up and stop the blonde male. Hurry. No Zo. Stay gone. Apollo said cheerfully, feeling like his old self again. I'm about to recite a new haiku to commemorate my victory and I know how much you hate them. So don't show up. You will do no such thing, Apollo. I can and I shall, my sister. Oh, how I shall. Hey Thale-chan, I got the flag. Naruto said. Hold off the others for me while I get to checkpoint. Charles, you're in charge of my group. Charles nodded briefly before getting back fighting with his opponent and Thalia grinned in acknowledge while pushing back a hunter with her spear. Naruto then jumped up high and landed. He held out his spear and the dinosaur roar with fire coming out again before going to their position. Naruto grinned while on his animation. The campers were going to win this time. He could feel it. He could bet on it since he had the goddess of luck on his side. That had everyone's eyes up. You lucky bastard. You sorry bastard. The twins shouted again. It didn't take a genius to figure out who said what. Naruto was shocked for a moment before he just laughed. That makes so much sense now. He giggled. Naiko's smile was pretty vicious. I'll read the next chapter if no one minds, he said, a little too happy about reading The Fall of the Mighty Hunters of Artemis. Naiko's smile was pretty vicious. I'll read next if no one minds, he said, a little too happy about reading The Fall of the Mighty Hunters of Artemis. No. Artemis snarled. I'm reading. She summoned the book to her, flipped to the page. Naiko scowled at her, but didn't say anything because he didn't want an enraged goddess turning him into an antelope or something. Artemis found the page and started reading. Chapter 8. Victory, Oracle, and Meeting, she began, praying that her hunters pull through. Apollo smiled victoriously, hoping he had won. Zo and her team are currently a few minutes away from the camp flag. Their plan was simple. Break from her group and get the flag without the campers noticing. It worked 50 times in the past, so they're sure it can work again. When got to the checkpoint they saw no camper. The hunters blinked, then blinked again. Finally, they laughed at the situation. They left no one to guard the flag, one of the hunters laughed out. How stupid can someone be? Out of all the games, this would be the easiest one yet. No, they didn't. Ares sang. Artemis scowled, but kept reading. Obviously some male made that plan. Another hunter laughed out. Zo nodded and was about to grab it when she heard a shout of attack. The hunters immediately got on guard and Annabeth's team attacked the hunters. The hunters could barely defend themselves from this, but managed to fight. Zo got out of the fight, but saw Naruto and Annabeth in front of her. Apollo smirked and wagged his finger. Tut tut, Zo my dear, he chastised. You should know by now, nothing is as it seems. Yeah. Like Kakashi-sensei says, look underneath the underneath. Naruto laughed. He learned that from me, you know. Hephaestus asked in amusement. Naruto looked at him. Yeah, because we all have to learn from someone, even if Kakashi didn't teach me much, he did instill some strong ideals in me. That's good at least, Hephaestus nodded. Artemis gritted her teeth, hoping Zo wouldn't fail her. Sorry Zo-chan, but you had to pass through us to get the flag, Naruto said with a smirk. Annabeth nodded in agreement and brought out a kunai. Zo frowned. She can't underestimate the blonde since he could match up against Artemis in a fight. So knowing that, she got 2 knives out since her arrows will be useless against him and charged at the 2. Artemis smiled and nodded at the smart move. Ares did too, though he looked like a cat that caught the mouse. Wise decision, but ultimately futile unless she can trick Naruto and grab the flag, Athena mentioned, making Artemis pale when she realized that Naruto had grabbed the flag last chapter. Dragon grinned. And then she's gotta haul ass back over the line, which I don't think will work out too well with a ninja being her opponent and having her flag in hand, he said laughingly. Artemis was sweating badly. And Apollo saw this. Worried, baby sister. He teased. No. She denied and quickly began reading again, not registering that Apollo had called her baby sister. Naruto and Annabeth charged with both having kunai and fought with Zo. It was hand fighting mixed with hand-to-hand combat. Zo used her knives for defense while using her feet to fight. Naruto grabbed her leg when she was about to kick and flipped her. Zoe backflipped and charged at the two again. She clashed her knife with Annabeth's kunai and also tried to kick the blonde under. Naruto flipped and about to hit her in the back, but she managed to twist and dodge, making the two stumble. They managed to get on their feet and turn to Zoe, who was frowning at them. "Naruto, why aren't you fighting seriously?" Zoe said, "Your style is not like that and would help you fight at the top of your abilities." The two blondes smirked, making her even more confused and frustrated. Why aren't they taking her seriously? She's the lieutenant of the hunt, damn it. Naruto grinned at her fully, "Because my dear hunter, our goal wasn't to beat you. Our goal was to stall you," Annabeth said. Zoe was confused by that until she heard a roar from the forest. Everyone turned to the direction of the roar and stopped fighting to see a metal skeletal dinosaur coming out with Naruto on top of the monster. Everyone's eyes widened and some hunters and campers screamed in fear. But Zoe didn't focus that. She was focused on the fact that Naruto was on top of it. If Naruto was on that thing, then who? Her eyes widened and she turned to see Naruto glowing red and Annabeth gone. She was about to move, but it was too late. The blonde demigod exploded and sent Zoe flying. She landed on the grass floor, winded and bruised from the explosion. "Annabeth, catch!" Naruto yelled, throwing the flag up high. Annabeth jumped up and caught the flag, giving victory to Camp Half-Blood for the very first time in a long time. Everything was quiet for a moment. The shock of the hunters of Artemis losing was that great. However, it was soon broken when the ramifications hit Artemis full force and she paled greatly as her eyes widened wide and tears formed in the corners of them. "Ooh," she wailed. "Yes." Apollo cried loudly as he jumped up and began to dance in his chair. This was all that was needed to get the others cheering. The demigods were cheering out loud and celebrating the hunter's defeat. Naruto was just laughing joyfully as he watched the teens around him go crazy, except Frank and Hazel. Percy and Annabeth jumped up and kissed each other passionately, much to Athena's disgust and anger. Aelia was grinning that her other self had won as Jason and Piper were following Percy and Annabeth's example. The gods and goddesses were ecstatic as well. For the first time, at least in that reality, the campers had won against Artemis's hunters. "Camp Half-Blood we-ians," Leo shouted at the top of his lungs. "And the hunters lose spectacularly," Nico said vindictively, grinning maliciously. Dragon held up an air horn and blew it. "That means," he pointed at Artemis. "Artemis, goddess of the hunt, you lost the bet." Artemis looked horrified. "Wah no. Please. Please don't make me honor Apollo's stupid bet." "Oh. He won't, Artie. I will," Apollo said happily as he threw his arm around her shoulders. "Come the break, you will honor our bet or I'll tell your hunters about." He whispered something into her ear and she turned red. "No. Not that. Anything but that," she cried. "Then it looks like you have a bet to honor," Apollo said cheerfully. Artemis looked at him in horror before screaming in mortification and hiding her face. Apollo laughed again and took the book. "I'll read for her for a bit," he said. "Camp Half-Blood," Chiron yelled in an ecstatic voice, crying in tears of joy. The campers cheered louder than they ever had, and if it wasn't for the barrier, New York would have heard. The campers came up together, hugging their siblings or friends, throwing their weapons in the air, their blunts. So don't worry, the whole camp went insane with happiness. Aelia, Claris, Selena, Bianca and Annabeth all ran and hugged Naruto tightly. Then they noticed that he was still shirtless and let go, blushing heavily. Katie giggled at how the girls acted and hugged Naruto, not caring if he's naked above the torso. Naruto smiled and hugged his little sister back. Then he let go and walked to Zoe, who's still looking dazed. Meanwhile, the remaining hunters that were conscious or was just getting up were in shock and disbelief. They just lost capture the flag for the first time in years. They found a few knocked out, some in traps, and 2 of them buried with their head in the surface. Artemis cried as she mourned the loss her hunters suffered. Percy and Annabeth grimaced at the other Annabeth as she hugged Naruto before blushing and jumping away. "I'd say they'd be happy," Thalia proclaimed, trying not to think of her other's almost noticeable crush on Naruto. "They just beat the hunters. Not a small feat." Ares was laughing. "I love it. I love it." Zoe got out of her daze feeling when Naruto got in front of her and held out his hand. "Good job, Zoe. Though don't underestimate us next time. That's how you lost so easily," Naruto said. "You didn't expect what would happen and presumed that we would use the same strategy. You have forgotten that I was there." Zoe blushed and mentally cursed herself for that blunder, but she appreciated Naruto's words. If it was any other man, she would have thought he was being arrogant and would kick them under their legs. But this was Naruto. She had known him for 3 years and never told a lie or told any of their secrets. He was never perverted, in fact he hated perverts as much as her and Artemis. He is one of the rare good men in the world. "It's because most of the men who ever bothered to teach me anything were perverts," Naruto grumbled. "And even then, they'd rather enjoy their vices than actually try and help out. Especially, Iro Sennin." She took the offer hand and got up. She blushed when she saw his bare chest up close and looked away quickly, making sure Naruto didn't notice. But unfortunately he did. "Hey Zo, your face is red. Are you okay?" Naruto asked in concern. Zo blushed harder at the fact he caught her, but felt her heart flutter hearing his concern. She had not felt that way ever since she helped that man. Percy looked down at that and gritted his teeth. Hercules. Annabeth noticed and placed a hand on his shoulders. He smiled gratefully at her. She shook her head to get the image out and to answer Naruto's question. "No, I'm fine. It's not anything bad," Zo said, stuttering a little. She mentally cursed herself for stuttering and acting like a girl that is near her crush. "Are you sure?" Naruto asked, then put his hand on her forehead. "Let me check your temperature, just to make sure." He got a little, making her beet red and almost let out an eep. But stop herself. She was going to keep some dignity as a hunter. In the background, everyone is seeing this cute scene. The hunters look amused at the scene. They all knew of Zo's feeling for the boy, and some were betting who was going to break their vow. Artemis or Zo. The guys in the background are all shocked and gobsmacked. Naruto is making a hunter blushing. Blushing. Some of the guys tried to flirt with the hunters, but end up with arrows sticking up their butts, especially Apollo's cabin. Aphrodite squealed loudly at the turn of events, even before it registered to everyone else. "She's in Louis. I never thought I'd see the day. I'm so happy for her." Happy, Artemis stuttered. "Well, yeah. I've always felt sorry for her after Herc the jerk broke her precious heart," Aphrodite explained. "You've just only seen my irritation at her for not attempting to fix it." Artemis spluttered indignantly while the demigods that knew Zo were shocked. "I think I just went crazy, wise girl," Percy muttered. "I'm with you there, kelp brain," Thalia muttered. "And the girls. Well, let's just say that there is a lot of feminine fury coming out." It broke some the guy's shock expression and cower against the killing intent. Even though it's not pointing at them, it's still scary to feel so much intent from them. Most of them are glaring at the hunter out of jealousy or are overprotective possessive of their brother. Athena's and Hephaestus's little girls, Thalia, Selena, Claris, and Annabeth has the worst glares and are holding their weapon. The only ones who are not glaring is Katie, Metellus, and the little girls in the other cabins. Both of them are rolling their eyes at Naruto's dense personality and the girls' jealousy, protectiveness, or possessiveness. Naruto was blushing furiously at so many girls having crushes on him. Even one or more of them maybe being at Sundeer. Dragon laughed. "Oh, Naruto, you poor and unfortunate soul," he thought in amusement. Most of the guys in the room looked irritated at the other Naruto getting so many girls to like him, but they couldn't say anything about it. Frank, however, frowned. "I don't know if his luck is good or just terrible," he said. "It's both," Naruto and Dragon said, Naruto in misery, Dragon in amusement. Hazel sweat dropped. "That doesn't seem right," she mumbled. "When do the Greek and Roman mythologies ever make sense?" Dragon asked rhetorically. The only demigod that ever had a semblance of good luck was Perseus, and even that was met with some bad luck in his life. He pretty much got the better end of the stick there. The Olympians looked like they wanted to say something, but after they thought it over, they had to concede he had a point. Their kids in the past lived very shitty lives after all. Alia was about to get them away from each till everyone turned around to see the oracle. Walking. Everyone turned and either gasped, got wide eyes, let their mouths drop, or all the above. The oracle never came out and certainly never moved. Naruto squeaked in fear, making everyone turn to him. "What's wrong, my son?" Hephaestus asked in concern. "Nothing. Nothing at all," Naruto said quickly. "Doesn't seem like nothing," Jason said. "Yeah, bro, what's eating you?" Leo asked. Hyper looked up at the screen, then back to Naruto. "Naruto. Are you afraid of zombies or something?" "No. You can kill zombies." "Okay. Ghosts then." Naruto didn't say anything, answering her question. Leo laughed. "Dude, that's so lame. You'd think that until you get attacked by one," Percy hissed at Leo, making the son of Hephaestus winced. "Ghosts are a pain to deal with." "I know." Naruto shouted, making everyone jump. "You can't hit a ghost. They're intangible. How can you beat something that's not really there?" "If he hates ghosts, he'll be terrified of me." Naiko smiled thinly, thinking of his title of the Ghost King. "The oracle has never came out of attic before," Chiron said in awe and fear. It stopped, staring directly at Naruto, and in the blonde eyes, it split into 4 people. The third Hokage and the Sannin. Naruto's eyes widened. He hadn't seen 4 of them in a decade, and one of them is dead. How did the oracle know about his temporary sensei, grandfather figure, his auntie figure, and one of his enemies? Naruto, for a moment, got over his fear for a moment and narrowed his eyes at the spectral figures of people he knew. "What's going on?" "You're being granted a quest," Apollo murmured. "Interesting. That's another difference in this world and ours," Thalia mused. In ours, Zoe was the one who was granted the quest. Naiko had stiffened at this point, bracing himself for what he might hear. 7 shall go save the goddess in chains, Hiruzen said, 5 shall fight in the land without rain. Then Orochimaru started talking, the bane of Olympus shows the trail. Campers and hunters combined prevail. Jiraiya came next, the champion shall face his past. And the hero shall face the sand cast. And Tsunade came last, the titan's curse one must withstand. And one will burn the titan's land. The images disappeared and the oracle collapsed. Everyone stared at it in shock, not moving an inch. Naiko's, Percy's, and Thalia's eyes widened. It said 5 shall fight and 1 will burn the titan's land. Does this mean Bianca and Zoe will live? They thought simultaneously, though only Thalia and Percy thought the part about Zoe. Artemis felt a large sense of dread, knowing she was the goddess since her other was going after the bane of Olympus. She was also a little irked that it was a male that was given the quest to save her instead of one of her hunters. Apollo was upset that his sister was in danger, and it showed in his face. Tyron shook his head, getting out of and blew his horn, counselors, to the big house. Everyone then got of their shock and went to the big house to talk about the quest. Mount Olympus. The gods were getting impressed at what they are seeing. Naruto made a well-developed plan. Attack from all sides and attack where they least expected. Amazing. Even Apollo and Ares are impressed, though they will not admit to anyone. Apollo winced at that, knowing his other was still hung up on Artemis being nice to the other Naruto. Oh, come on, other me, lighten up a bit. Ares laughed. Aphrodite and Demeter cheered for Katie and Selena when they attacked the hunters. Hephaestus and Hades smiled when they saw their children beat the hunters quickly and swiftly. Hermes cheered on for his boys, but sighed when he saw Phoebe breaking them. Why oh why had Peter broken the girl's heart? Now his children are suffering for it whenever they meet Phoebe. Hermes winced at the reminder, but thanked Poseidon's son for saving his sons. He thanked Poseidon repeatedly when his son saved both of his own. They saw Naruto's ability and they were at awe at what he could do. Everyone but Zeus, that is. Of course, every Olympian, save Zeus and demigod, save Naruto, groaned. The king god frowned at this. If this boy could do that many powers, who knows what the others in the other world would do? Would they try to overthrow him? What if the boy told these shinobi and decide to attack? Paranoia at its finest, Percy said sarcastically. You know. Not everyone wants your damn throne, Zeus. All evidence to the contrary, nephew, Zeus sneered. What evidence? Hephaestus dying y'all to your thrones. Poseidon rallying the other Olympians together to get you to be a better ruler. Need I remind you, you have Hades' birthright right now, and the only reason you do have it is the luck of the draw. Poseidon, however you slice it, has his. And he's perfectly content with it. Why would he give up what is rightfully his to get your position? Dragon asked with a raised eyebrow. Athena looked thoughtful at his logical argument and smiled. That was a very good and sound argument. While she was no fan of Poseidon, she'd freely admit that he enjoyed being god of the seas. And as the second son of Kronos, that domain was his by birthright. He lucked out in a way. Poseidon looked smug on his throne, happy his baby brother was being told off by this mortal. Yes. He was perfectly content with his domain, and he wouldn't rid himself of it for a long while. Hades smirked at how his drama queen youngest sibling was being torn into. Take that, bold boy. Zeus suddenly had the desire to throw lightning at his brothers. He just scoffed and turned away from them, scowling. Naruto was glaring at Zeus. Why would he want Zeus's throne? He didn't want to be immortal. He wasn't Orochimaru, for Konoha's sake. They need to make sure the boy is taken care of. The gods and goddesses' eyes widened when they saw the T-Rex. The ones that isn't shocked were Hephaestus and Athena. Everyone turned to them when they saw that they didn't look shocked at all. Zeus glared at them, his usual temper flowing up, but Athena and Hephaestus aren't affected. They were used to it. You knew. The king god thundered out, literally and metaphorically, you knew that the boy had that powerful animatronic and didn't tell me. Hephaestus stared at his father, his eyes defiant. And why should I tell you what my kids are doing 24/7, father? Hephaestus asked with a tone. Because they may end up trying to overthrow me. Zeus replied instantly. Didn't we just get through talking this over? Jason asked. And is this really my dad? Unfortunately, Jason, Thalia said tiredly. He's just like his dad. Zeus looked at Thalia in shock, uncomprehending that she'd compare him to Kronos. The Olympians looked shocked, but they didn't counter it. Well, Hera did though. How dare you compare my husband to that monster? She screamed. Well, Thalia has a point, Annabeth said bitingly. He's acting the same way Kronos did when he feared one of his children would overthrow him. You little. Dragon snapped his fingers, and Hera's voice died down. She seemed shocked for a moment before she got mad again. She tried yelling at Dragon, but no sound came out. Everyone looked at him in either shock. Or in Zeus's case, anger. What did you do to her? he thundered. Hit her mute button. She was making my ears ring, Dragon said bluntly. Zeus was about to blow up again when Dragon simply snapped his fingers again and Zeus was rendered speechless as well. Apollo, read. The god of the sun, music and medicine, nodded quickly and started back reading. Yes, father. Hephaestus answered calmly. No use in telling a lie. I did know that Naruto had it. The animatronic thought Naruto is worthy of him and became bonded to him. I didn't tell you because you would try to kill him. Of course I will. Zeus roared, ignoring the glares he's receiving, that boy is too dangerous to be alive. For those powers, now the animation. He cannot be allowed to live. What gives you the right to decide if I should die or not? Naruto shouted, jumping up and glaring at Zeus. Zeus glared at him, but couldn't say nothing because of Dragon's spell. They're fake gods and goddesses, Naruto, Dragon said. They were created by some old codgers in Greece when they decided they wanted deities more like themselves, so they could feel good about their sins. They're good at thinking they truly are all-knowing and the like. And none of you say anything to try and contradict me. Or else you'll end up like Zeus and Hera. The Olympians stayed silent. Percy and Annabeth smiled. We've got to learn how to do that, Percy whispered to her. It's good to see Hera shut up like that, Annabeth grinned. I want in, Thalia muttered to them. Anything to keep the royal loose cannon from blabbing is something I want. No. Hephaestus yelled out, his hand, legs and beard turning on fire, you will not kill my favorite son. He has done many things for us, including protecting your daughter. If you try to kill him, I will go to war with you. Zeus narrowed his eyes on his son, you dare threaten me? Zeus asked quietly. No one ever threatens him. He's the king of Olympus, the defeater of Kronos. No one can stand against him. Hephaestus' fire got brighter. He was not scared of his father. When it came to his children, he would not let any god harm them. It's not a threat, father. It's a promise. He whispered. Everyone is shocked and a little scared at how he's reacting. But in Aphrodite's case, she's a bit aroused by it. Athena saw the look Hephaestus' wife is giving and she shook her head. The shallow goddess. She stood up to stand by her stepbrother. Many looked incredulously at the love goddess. She looked affronted. What? I haven't seen him like that in several hundred years. There's a reason I wasn't averse to marrying him once upon a time, she explained. The other Olympians ate at that and left it alone. And I'm not shallow. I'm with my stepbrother Zeus, Athena said, narrow her grey critical orbs on him, you will not lay a single hand on my champion. He helped many of my children and I will not let him get killed because of your arrogance and paranoia. Zeus turned red with rage. Even his favorite godly daughter. I thought I was your favorite, Artemis shouted. Zeus tensed as both his daughters looked at him, expecting an answer that wasn't going to come soon. He motioned for Apollo to keep reading. Suddenly, Demeter stands up, I'm with them as well. He saved many of her children, including Katie. He gave her favorite daughter and gave her a big brother. She owed him a debt that she could never repay. Slowly, one by one, the other gods and goddesses stand up. Poseidon, Hades, Hestia, Hera, Dionysus, Aphrodite, and Hermes all stood up beside Dionysus. Naruto saved the ones they love while Hera liked her grandson. Despite him being a demigod, he came from true marriage, not just someone's outing. As for Hestia, she was fond of the demigod and would fight her brother if he laid a hand on him. The only ones who are not standing were Apollo and Ares. Zeus turned red with rage as he saw so many Olympians turning against his other, while Hera was shocked that her other liked the blonde demigod. Then again, he was born from a true marriage. Hades, despite siding with Naruto for saving his children, glared slightly at the blonde ninja, not liking how his eldest sister was fond of him. He'd have to test the child soon to see if he was worthy of his sister and able to protect her, or see if he would betray her like that other fool had tried so many years ago. Naruto shivered crazily under the god of the underworld's gaze. Zeus turned to every one of them, his face full of fury and his skin red. How dare they go against them? He saved 5 of them from father and gave birth to the others. How dare they tell them what to do? But even in his mind-induced rage, he knew that this would be a losing battle. But he would not give in to their demands, he's the king, damn it, so he made a compromise. We will discuss it during the council meeting. We will decide if he dies or not, understood? The gods frowned at him while Apollo smiled brightly at that and Ares grinned at the thought of blood. All the gods and goddesses conceded since they would win the vote anyway and sat down. They got back to the game when they saw Naruto writing animation in the game. When they won, all the gods and goddesses who had kids cheered in happiness. Even Dionysus and Hades got bright smiles on their faces at the fact that their children won. Zeus scowled when he saw his daughter hugging that spawn. Another reason he want to kill him is because he got his daughter in his clutches. When's he dead, he would convince Thalia to join the hunters and he won't have to worry. The celebration stopped when they saw the oracle walking to Naruto and saw the thing give him the prophecy. Thalia turned sharply at Zeus. Would you really do that? She demanded. He didn't answer and looked away. Thalia grew angry. She didn't like people telling her what she should do with her life. How dare you? Read. Annabeth and Percy shouted, not wanting to see Thalia blow up. Apollos frowned in anger. Why does he have to get the prophecy? Why not any other children or a hunter? As a matter of fact, he can't rescue Artemis because if he do, he'll seduce and try to better, just like that bastard Orion. I would never do that. Naruto shouted at Apollo. Said God winced. I'm inclined to believe you, but this me doesn't have a mortal blessed by chaos to ram the cold hard facts down my throat, he explained. Dragon smiled evilly. Hephaestus frowned in worry. He heard the part where the champion shall face his past. Are the shinobi going to come here? Are they going to try to get Naruto? He had many questions and no answers to them. He would have to watch Naruto Ancient's rules be damned with the help of Athena and maybe others. Athena was thinking rapidly like she usually did. She already figured out part of the first one, but who were the 5 that were going to fight? The second one she had a guess about the Bane of Olympus and it was obvious that the hunters and campers would have to work together. Naruto would face the shinobi, but what did they mean by sand cast? And the last one, the Titan's curse must be the sky, but burn the Titan's land. What does that mean? Zeus evaporated the mist and slammed his bolt down on the floor. Okay, show is over. Council dismissed. All the gods left, leaving them with their own thoughts. Why would they want to get me back? Naruto asked. 90% of Konoha hates me for the fox. I'd think they'd be happy I was gone. They probably think that, as a Jinchuriki, that you're their property, Hephaestus growled, making many of the Olympians and all the demigods shiver. Or more than likely, because Naruto is responsible for most of their trade agreements and alliances, when he vanished, they cut ties to Konoha and left them broke and friendless. Athena was impressed with the blonde. He did all that. Naruto's a stereotypical Japanese-themed hero. They have the uncanny ability to gain unlikely friendships, Dragon said. Ah, I see. Naruto frowned. Japanese-themed hero. The big house. We are wasting time. Zoe said, inside the council room. All the counselors were in there, also Chiron and Mr. D. Milady needs us, so my hunters need to go now. In case you forgot Zoe, only 7 of us can go, and Naruto is leader of this quest. Thalia said with a smirk. She loved riling the hunter and seeing Zoe clenching the table made her feel so happy. Thalia sighed mournfully. She missed that. Artemis saw the look and wondered, maybe I should have Zoe come and talk to her. Then she saw Percy and remembered he had changed Zoe somehow. And see if she'd give this male a chance. After she completed the shiver bet she made with Apollo. I know. Zoe exclaimed, slamming the table, but this is a quest for a hunter. We are Artemis' chosen hunters and are all close to her. So is Naruto. Thalia shot back, she's not going to let this girl win. He's the only male to befriend Artemis since Orion and is stronger than any of us. He's a good leader, even better than you, so if anyone can rescue Artemis, it's Naruto. Annabeth, Selena, the Stoles, Clarice, Katie and Lee all agreed with her statement. Zoe looked down on the table for a minute till nodding reluctantly. It's just that she hated the fact that Naruto got the quest and the fact it wasn't her or any of the hunters didn't get. Plus, forcing to agree with Thalia added salt to the wound. Fine, Naruto will lead his quest, Zoe said. I will gather for other hunters or will leave Tomer. Oh no you don't. Thalia yelled, slamming her fist down. She will not let Naruto out of her sight this time. She did it once and he disappeared for years. She will not do it again. It's campers not camper. I'm going with Naruto whether you like it or not. Aphrodite looked slyly at Thalia. My, afraid you'll lose your crush to an older woman, my dear? She asked trivially. No. Thalia shouted back at her, blushing red. The two keep arguing back and forth. The Stoles, Lee and Percy were betting who's going to throw the first punch. Katie, Annabeth, Bianca and Chiron are trying to break up the fight. Selena and Clarice were also betting the same thing the guys are. Dionysus was reading his wine magazine and drinking his special Diet Coke. And Naruto is thinking right now. Percy Annabeth groaned. Said demigod just grinned at her. Demeter scoffed. Such deplorable actions, she said, referring to the betting. They need more cereal in their diets. Persephone, who had been content to stay quiet next to her husband, groaned softly. He was thinking about what the prophecy said. Since Athena blessed him, his thought process was much faster than original. In fact, his slightly above Athena intelligence due to his street smarts, experience, his intelligence, and the blessing. So right now, he figured out at least half the prophecy. Athena and Apollo were shocked, though impressed. At least half. And not one of my kids. That says volumes about you, Blondie, Apollo said. As expected from my champion, Athena said, somewhat smugly. The Olympians rolled their eyes. Poseidon muttered Owlhead's infatuation was showing under his breath. Athena glared at him. He had to go save Artemis with 7 people, both campers and hunters. The Bane of Olympus knew the way to get there, but he felt he didn't need it. He had already been there before. Shinobi were also going to be here. That made Naruto frown. How on earth would they get over here? They don't have the kind of technology to get here. Did they make a new jutsu? And the Sans cast. He got the feeling what it meant, but he prayed that he's wrong. He and Dad's blunder might show up sooner than expected. The Titan's curse obviously means holding up the sky, and he guessed that Artemis is going to be under there soon, if not now. The rest didn't make sense to him at all. That intrigued everyone, especially Naruto and Hephaestus. What might have been this blunder they were talking about? Naruto, however, was more worried about the Sand caste. He had a very good idea who it was and didn't like the thought of fighting them. His musings were interrupted when he heard Thalia's and Zoe's argument getting louder and louder. He sighed. Why must the two fight all the time? He was getting increasingly annoyed by this, and after a few minutes he snapped. Enough. Naruto shouted, making everyone jump including Chiron and Mr. D. He scowled at the two girls, making them real uncomfortable. This is my quest, you two, so don't make the decision for me. I can pick who I want for myself, so don't assume who I want in this. We will discuss this like grown up and not like little kids. Understood. Nobody said anything, making Naruto scowl. Understood. Wow. Note to self. Never make new brother mad, Leo wrote on a notepad. That was him annoyed. Naruto mad is something you haven't seen yet, Dragon said, making the demigods pale. If that wasn't Naruto mad, what was? Yes. Everyone said, standing straight up. The guys didn't dare to speak up due to fear of the blonde. When he was angry, you wouldn't receive any mercy if you were the one who angered him. The girls, well, they were blushing cherry red or had a light blush on their face, except for Katie. Despite how scary he looked, his dominating personality is pretty hot. Even Zoe thought that. Aphrodite squealed while the other females looked awkward at that. Naruto was uncomfortable. Damn it, why me? He thought, cursing whoever wrote this. Naruto managed to calm down so he could think calmly on this. Then he turned to Zoe. Okay Zoe, I wouldn't imagine leaving you here since you are the closest to Artemis. So pick another hunter to go with us. Zoe smiled at him and nodded. Phoebe, she is a skilled tracker and a good healer as well. Zoe said. Naruto nodded. He went on a few missions with Phoebe, so he knows how skilled she is. Wait, Phoebe is the tank girl, right? Travis asked. Percy and Thalia groaned at this, Zoe nodded cautiously, and the two Stoll brothers grinned and pulled out a hunter t-shirt. Naruto sensed a prank coming up and looked at the Stolls to see a tiny hint of pink in their eyes. Naruto's eyes widened before he scowled and got behind the two, bunking their heads to snap out of it. Wait, Aphrodite's the one who caused them to do that, Thalia shouted. Yep, Percy said. You knew. She told me such when we were near Hephaestus's junkyard. Aphrodite winced slightly, thinking this wouldn't go over well. Who, what, when, where, why? Travis and Connor said at the same time. They are confused. 1 minute they were listening in on the meeting and the rest is blank. Naruto sighed and rubbed his forehead in annoyance. Aphrodite was possessing you and was about to make you poison Phoebe with scent or blood since you two got beaten up by her. Naruto could smell anything from miles away thanks to life in the woods. So he knew that shirt was covered with blood. The Stoll's brother scowled at that. Every demigod hated being controlled by the gods, literally, so they were angry that Aphrodite did that. They had no quarrel with the hunter since they understood why she beat the crap out of them. They didn't agree, but they understand. The demigods turned and glared at the Olympians, who flinched at what had been read, then at their kids. Aphrodite shrunk further into her seat. Okay, Grover, Naruto said, can you still do that tracking music of yours? I practice every day to keep myself from being rusty, Grover said proudly. Naruto helped him practice before he disappeared. Grover had gotten better at it and now his successful rate is 100%. Naruto smirked. Man's a miracle worker, Percy murmured, and Thalia, Annabeth, and Nico nodded, laughing slightly. Then do you want to join in? Naruto said. Grover nodded eagerly. He had always to be on a mission with Naruto and now got a chance to show just how much he improved. We're going with you as well. Thalia and Annabeth said. Naruto nodded, not bothering to argue with them. He knows that they won't budge on this, so he didn't bother. Plus, he might need them if he can have the chance in redeeming Luke. Percy frowned. Now that Annabeth and Grover are in the quest, he needed to go on as well. Percy groaned again. Great. As if he didn't hate himself enough at that point. Though, a slightly smaller part of himself could see the benefit and was currently wondering if this blonde ninja could actually redeem Luke. Naruto looked around a bit before landing his sight on Bianca. Bianca, you will come as well. I want to test your skills at the battlefield. Before Bianca can open her mouth, Percy started talking. Wait a minute, why her? Percy protested, ignoring the looks he's being sent. Bianca barely got any training, why send her out now? Besides, I want to go. Chiron groaned and put a hand on his face. He forgot about Percy's loyalty towards his friend, so he wanted to make sure they're safe. Well, at least you're loyal to your friends, at least, Naruto said, trying to comfort Percy. And it will get him killed one day, Athena mentioned coldly. Naruto turned and glared at her. Those who abandon the rules are trash, but those who abandon their friends are worse than trash, she quoted. That is very unwise, Athena told him. Then I'll be a fool my whole life, he answered, making Athena's eyes widen. You'd rather be a fool than let your friends die. Even if it costs you yours? She asked incredulously, uncomprehending on why he'd do that. They're my friends, Naruto said simply. As long as I'm fighting for them, I'll never lose. Athena stared at him in shock, but quickly became annoyed. This was supposed to be her champion in another life. A ninja who put other lives above his own. While she tried to wrap her brain around this, Apollo began reading again. Meanwhile, Naiko narrowed his eyes at the blonde. The best kind of training is experience on the field, Naruto explained. I can't coddle her forever, so the sooner the better. It also gives her better time to prepare. But why do you want to go? I thought a demigod would appreciate a break after going on 2 quests and a mission. Naruto looked at him with critical eyes, his eyes turning gray like Athena and her children. Normally I would be, Percy said, but Annabeth and Grover are going and I want to be with them, to know they are safe. Naruto narrowed his now gray orbs at him. Well, he is telling the truth, it's not the whole truth. You might be telling the truth, but not the whole truth, Naruto stated, deciding to call him out. It's something else is there. Percy looked uncomfortable at this. He'd admit to himself that there was one thing that made him want to go, but don't want to reveal it to the others. It's about Luke, isn't it? Naruto stated. Percy stiffened, not looking at him in the eye. How does he know? Seeing that Percy was quiet now, Naruto turned to Bianca. Now, do you want to be on this quest? Naruto asked, after all it is polite to ask other before throwing it at him. Bianca bit her lip before nodding. She needed to prove herself to Naruto. She needed to show him that she was strong. Now both Naiko and Hades were scowling. They didn't like how Bianca was getting close to the blonde. Naiko also was hoping Naruto would not make Zoe's mistake in letting Bianca on that quest. His only consolation was he had asked instead of demanded like Zoe had done. Any questions? When No raised their hand, Naruto grinned and was about to dismiss the council when Chiron stopped to talk about one more thing. One more thing I want to discuss, Chiron said, can you make a copy of the training system for us? The campers who are staying here paled. Naruto grinned and nodded, making them shiver. One thing for sure, they're in for a rough week. Ah, suck it up, demigods, Ares said remorselessly, laughing happily. Well, now that that's done. Dragon said happily, looking at Artemis evilly. Artie here's gotta pay up on her bet. She looked at him in horror. No. Please. Don't make me. Artemis cried, making many demigods look at her in shock, no more than Thalia. A deal's a deal. Dragon said, grinning. Now, let's take a quick break and have Artemis pay up on her bet. Apollo grinned grandly. Artemis flushed red as she sat in her temple. After they finished treating, she flashed here and was started freaking out. What was she going to do? What was she going to do? She didn't want anyone to see her complete Apollo's bet. This was so embarrassing. She took a couple of deep breaths and tried to calm herself. Calm down, Artemis. Calm down. It's just those demigods and you siblings and uncles. That's all. You can swear them to secrecy and your hunters minus the future Thalia will never know of this, she tried to convince herself. It wasn't working well. Just make it through this, then you can make Apollo pay dearly for this embarrassment. She gulped, trying to swallow her mortification as she went to gather all the items she'd need to complete her side of this crappy bet. I never should have let Apollo rope me into this stupid bet. Apollo. Apollo was nervous. His plan was coming along well, but he couldn't help but worry. It was a simple plan. Embarrass Artie in front of everyone, tease her a little like he used to in the old days, albeit with less hateful intentions than back then, have Dragon bring the hunters, and have himself Apollo argue over their involvement and show Artie he was still the brother she liked to be around. Really, the only difficult part is the acting like he knew nothing of Dragon bringing in the hunters. Fortunately, he explained his predicament to Hermes, who was more than willing to help him out when he learned Apollo simply wanted to regain his sister's affections. Currently, everyone was mulling around the living room area Dragon conjured up, sitting around the shinobi, Naruto, as he explained some parts of his life. As he listened in, he had to admit the blonde had an interesting life, if nothing else. And then I said, hey, the freak with no eyebrows, put this in your bingo book. The ninja from Konoha no Sato that never backs down and never runs away. His name is Naruto Uzumaki, believe it. Naruto narrated. Naruto, Hephaestus groaned from his seat. He had taken his Minato form and was listening to his son's stories of what his life was like at Konoha. Watching it was one thing, but hearing it was a lot different. What? He insulted me. And it wasn't like we'd get very far with Kakashi-sensei trapped. Naruto defended. Anyways, I told Sasuke I had a plan and then we. Suddenly, the doors opened back up, everyone turned to see who it was. When they did, however, their jaws all dropped to the ground in unison. Artemis blushed deep dark red. "Stop staring at me like that," she stammered out in embarrassment. There, standing in the middle of the Olympian throne room's open doors, was Artemis, in her child form, wearing a pink frilly dress with a yellow bow around the waist and two silver ones tying her hair up in ponytails. In her hands was a little teddy bear wielding a silver bow in its hands and a quiver of arrows strapped to its back. The silence was deafening for a moment. No one moved or even spoke as they drank in the sight of Artemis in such a dress. Suddenly, Aphrodite squealed extremely loud. She looked so cutie. This was all that was needed for Ares to fall out of his seat and laugh like a lunatic. Ha. Never thought I'd see little Artie dress her age. Ha. Almost immediately, the other Olympians were chuckling or outright laughing as well. Dionysus joined his brother on the ground in laughter, and Hermes quickly began taking pictures of Artemis, a large shit-eating grin on his face. Demeter chuckled lightly as did Persephone, finding it amusing that Artemis was standing in front of them like this. Poseidon and Hades were grinning teasingly at their niece, also taking pictures, to Artemis's mortification. Zeus just smiled comfortably at her, trying to show her he didn't take pleasure in her embarrassment. Hera, however, was taking a lot of pleasure in this and was laughing loudly into her hand. Hephaestus and Athena shook their heads in amusement. The demigods' reactions were mixed. Thalia, Percy, Nico, Leo, and Annabeth were laughing so hard their sides hurt. Thalia because her mistress looked so girly, Percy and Annabeth because seeing Artemis like this was just so odd that they couldn't help it, Nico because he was being vindictive, and Leo just for the heck of it. Jason and Piper were so shocked at the sight of Artemis that they looked away, fearing that if they laughed, they might incur her wrath. Hazel had begun giggling uncontrollably and buried her face into Frank's shoulder. Nico had fallen off the couch, he was laughing so hard, trying to cover them up. The sight of Artemis's embarrassed form proved too much for her. Frank chuckled uneasily, but had decided to deal with Hazel and placed a hesitant hand on her shoulder. "Oh, look at my little sister," Apollo proclaimed grandly, suddenly appearing next to her and placing an arm around her shoulders. "Isn't she the cutest?" He gushed and pinched her cheek lightly. "Very," Aphrodite yelled out, losing her composure again. Ares and Dionysus laughed louder. "Stop it, Apollo," she stuttered. "Nope," Apollo said cheerfully. "I'm enjoying this too much. Now. Just like we agreed, say it." She paled. "Do I have to?" She whined fearfully. "Yes," he said, a little more seriously. "Or should we agree you are a coward?" She bristled at his threat but otherwise shook her head and took a deep breath. And, in the most girly cutesy voice any had ever heard from Artemis, she spoke. "Hello. My name is Artemis." And she held up the teddy bear. "This is Bambi. He's my bestest friend in the whole world." Again, silence ruled the area. You could practically hear Apollo's grin growing to epically large levels. Finally it was broken again by Aphrodite. "So cute," she gushed girlishly. Again, everyone started laughing as Aphrodite broke the ice. Everyone, except Zeus, though he was smiling, was laughing without reservations now. Artemis blushed a dark deep red. This was so humiliating. Apollo was laughing and holding her close, making her embarrassment even worse. This was almost as bad as when he made her dress up like a princess for mother. At least. "My lady." A startled voice came from behind her and she couldn't stop herself from paling as she whirled around and saw her hunters standing right there. Zoe stood in front, looking horribly shocked at her. "Zizo," she stammered. What are you?" "Thy newest maiden said you requested our presence here," she exclaimed and pointed a girl next to her who had long blonde hair and blue eyes and a vicious smirk on her face as she was suddenly encased in smoke. The hunters were shocked at this, and when the smoke cleared, Dragon was standing in her place. "Man, that was painful," he complained and walked away from the hunters. "I thought I had blown it for a while there. Don't see how Naruto can act the part when he uses his sexy jutsu." The hunters were shocked. They were tricked. By a boy no less. But before they could attack him, a cold, vicious voice that had their mistress look up in shock rang through the building. "Why are they here?" Apollo asked darkly. Dragon shrugged carelessly. "I figured that they'd want to be in on their mistress's humiliation," he said. "So I disguised myself as a girl and told them that Artemis wanted them up on Olympus ASAP." "They shouldn't be here," Apollo growled. "This bet was between me and her." The only reason everyone in the throne room saw was because they knew I made a bet with her and they needed to know Artemis completed it. The hunters were not needed. Yeah, but I decided to bring them anyway. What are you going to do about it? Dragon asked, a smirk on his lips. He gasped suddenly as several flaming arrows pierced his chest. Apollo watched on in apathy as the cloaked figure fell to the ground. Everyone in the room gasped. Hey. What the hell was that for? Naruto shouted angrily, but before he could demand an answer, Dragon's body burst into black specks. The specks raced to a place in the throne room and reformed into Dragon, who was flying through hand signs. He ended in the tiger symbol and said, fire style. Fireball jutsu. He exhaled a large ball of fire at Apollo, who calmly waved his hand and dispersed the flames. Very good, Dragon nodded from beside Apollo, a red-bladed katana called the Murasama aimed at Apollo's neck. But a bit slow. Be faster next time. Everyone looked at where he was, shocked. When he move? Was the thoughts of everyone. Apollo scowled, but Dragon waved the katana at him. But that's for later. How's about we finish up our break and get back to reading? Artemis, I think it's safe to say you've suffered enough. You can change now. Immediately, Artemis glowed gold and her outfit was back to her normal attire, her bare back in her temple. She sighed in relief. Dragon clapped his hands. Great. Now he snapped his fingers and suddenly, snacks appeared around the room. Let's eat. Naruto. Naruto had finished explaining his adventures to the demigods and was listening to Percy's adventures in rapt attention. He was extremely impressed with Percy's exploits and really wanted to test his skills against him. And then I stabbed Reptide into the glacier and sent them all into the frigid waters below, Percy said, explaining his adventures with Hazel and Frank. Only you, seaweed brain, Annabeth said and snuggled closer to his side. Percy chuckled. Of course, who else would I be? Everyone chuckled. Now, after we got the Imperial gold out of the bay, we hooked Arian to the chariot and 4 hours later, we were at Camp Jupiter. I suspect Reina was glad to see the three of you, Jason said. Yeah, but no one noticed us at first, and I'm kind of glad they didn't. I was close to falling to the ground, I was shaking so bad from that chariot ride. The enemy would have started calling me Old Man Jackson. The assorted demigods laughed. Naruto decided Percy was a pretty funny guy. He was about to say something when they heard a loud shrill cry of I will never fall for a male. The laugh accompanied the shout. Maybe, maybe not. But another version will. And already has. I doubt that male. How's about a bet then? You hang out for a couple of chapters of an alternate series of events revolving around the people in this room, and if you don't see your other is falling for a male, I'll let you shoot me with as many arrows as you want. If you do see you other is falling for a male, then you have to wear what Artemis did for 3 chapters. I'll let you shoot arrows at all the other males in the room. Deal? Naruto saw Artemis on the other end of the room pale as the girl said, fine. I shall take thy bet. Be prepared to lose, male. Only if you are, my dear. Dragon said with a large grin. Artemis looked horrified. Well, I think that this break has been long enough. Everyone ready to get back to reading. The demigods were, as they wanted to see if Naruto's quest would go by better than their own had. The Olympians were eager to see how well the shinobi handled the quest. They all went back to their seats and sat back down, with Zoe taking a new seat by her mistress. Her eyes narrowed at the circlet around Thalia's head, but didn't say anything about it. Yet. Alright. Dragon said, holding the book high. Who wants to read next? End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.